And hopefully, yeah, okay, that's done it. See, we're now recording, so that's brilliant. Welcome to our short show and tell today. Our next steps on How Busy Is Toon. I know many of you have been at the session before, so you'll be well aware that I'm Jenny Nelson at Newcastle Council, and I'm joined by David Scott from Hedgehog Lab, who's going to be co-presenting with me. And we've got a short session today as an update on our local digital fund project. That is, what we're doing more, what are we doing next around How Busy Is Toon? And just as a recap, the How Busy Is Toon project originated from a wish to share data with people to help them make an informed decision about visiting their town centre and to help them feel safe and encourage economic renewal. And the two aims of the Phase 2 project were to increase the uptake of the original How Busy Is Toon product across a wider geography, and also included in that is to develop a guide to share with councils and other organisations on how to do that. And the second phase, the second aim of the second phase was around delivering a better user experience on safe travel and transport data. Next slide, please. So today we will do just that. We'll give you an update on what we're doing now on the current HIBIT. It's very short, and then a bit more where we left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger at the last show and tell around where we were going to go next. So we pursued a little bit more discovery, more user research, and we'll give you some feedback on that. But we think we might have come to something that we're now able to take to sort of iteration and wireframe design. But yeah, hold that thought. We'll go on to the next slide. We have released the first version of what we're calling the onboarding guide. What I'll do is I'll share the link to that in the chat. It'll also be in a blog that's going out on our MHCLG project page. We'd be really keen to get your feedback on what you think of the onboarding guide. Does it give you the type of information that you think you need to scale this up within your area? So I'm already involving people like Mike and Paul Armstrong who are looking at it in their areas, but let me know what you think as well. Leeds, who have previously attended the show and tells, they have actually launched it's not a version of How Busy Is Toon, but they have launched a product, How Busy Here, which is working on the same basis of, how do we provide busyness information to people to encourage them to come back to their local areas and to feel confident and to feel safe. Leeds, I checked in with them. They are happy that we do sort of take some credit from that in terms of that this project gave them the confidence that there is a user need for this and that people do want to access this type of information. So even though they've taken a different approach, they have learned from the project, which is great because that's part of the local digital fund approach, that we build it once and that we share knowledge across the public sector. So we're now in the point of refreshing the current product, looking at the Gov UK design system, thinking about some of the accessibility in that as well. And how we respond to the user feedback, which if you remember from last time, people were really clear with us that they wanted more, they wanted to see more cameras, they really like the footage. So how do we actually build on that? Next slide, please, David. And if we move on to the new research that we've been doing, as I say, the sort of original focus, which if you've been at the previous show and tells, you'll be well aware, was really around sort of supporting a return to public transport and active travel. And the idea that, we've had a year of government messaging not to use public transport. People are really concerned about using public transport. Public transport has a bit of a PR issue at the moment. And as a result, we've got a lot of congestion, we've got a lot of car usage. How do we actually try and rebalance that from a sustainability perspective? And the outset, the result of a lot of research, a lot of discovery, was that actually there wasn't something that was jumping out as an immediate need for individuals that wasn't already being addressed, at least in part. And it really led us to kind of reflect back and think, well, where do we add value? What's the focus of the project? What is it that we're looking to do? And how do we pivot what we're doing in order to do that? Next slide, please, David. Seems to take an age to move between the slides. I don't know.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. I'll not blame you.
Can you see the new slide? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we got to, you know, when we're thinking about where can we add value, we thought about, well, is that something that we expand on in our current product? Are there other user needs that we haven't considered? So the role of cities, the user need for cities, the user needs of businesses around access to data and travel and transport. And actually, what if we just step back a bit and took a bit of a broader view of moving around and data relating to travel and transport, and not just about perhaps the public transport element of it and the route planning. And in order to do that, we undertook a number of surveys. So we surveyed users again. We went back out with some different ideas about how we could use the existing site. And didn't get really sort of anything further at that point. People liked what they saw, but again, there wasn't one standout thing that people thought we should do. Cities felt really strongly that there was a role for cities in supporting open data and sharing of data to drive economic recovery, innovation and sustainability. And in Newcastle, we're really fortunate we have the Urban Observatory, and some other cities are already looking at how to do that too. Although, as you'll see in a minute, most of that doesn't focus on real-time information and not necessarily on travel and transport data either. And I think the city perspective and the need to consider the role of cities was also endorsed in a conversation we had with quite an influential policymaker who we spoke to, who felt that, yes, Google and Citymapper and the like are doing things, but actually it shouldn't just be left to them. You know, there is a role for a city to be able to say, actually, we want to support the provision of this data. We also want to provide that, and that citizens have an expectation that cities might do that as well. And again, on businesses, we didn't get a brilliant response to that survey, but again, there certainly wasn't something that jumped out as an immediate user need there. Next slide, please. So then we hand over to David for the work that we did on thinking about what cities are doing in terms of sharing data.
Yeah, so thanks, Jenny. I guess as Jenny's shown there, when we went out and did surveys, some of it didn't come back with kind of a clear killer need. So we started to look at the different platforms that are available at the moment in terms of different cities that are sharing data in different ways. What we found is that some are literally sharing static data in the form of spreadsheets that people can download. Some provide visualizations and interactive dashboards, so you can kind of dig a bit deeper. And then some others act as kind of almost a shop front, and they link through to the sites that contain the data, such as .gov sites. But very rarely did we come across any that were really sharing real-time data. An example of one of the sites that we looked at is Open Data Bristol. And this platform actually does all three. So it shares data sets, provides visualizations, offers real-time data, but in beta format. And what we found across Open Data Bristol and some of these other sites is that they don't really have a kind of a public feel or a public facing feel. So they very much kind of are just presenting the data. Here, this is a kind of an example of the real-time data that's displayed in beta mode. We know from our research that there is a need for real-time data when it comes to planning for travel and transport. But what we were finding as we were going through these sites is that it kind of doesn't really exist. You'll see here kind of another example here on kind of mobility data. This is typical in terms of how the data is presented. It's not always clear, I think, to the consumer exactly what it all means or what they're looking at. And if we go back to the original How Busy Is Toon, our kind of goal was to take the data and make it easy for people to understand, make it more accessible, and crucially make it useful as well. And as we were looking and researching these sites, the question that we kept asking ourselves as we explored is, are they doing that for the intended audience use? Another example here of Cambridge Insight Open Data. These guys actually release some of their data, or they talk to the public in blog posts. So it feels a little bit more user-friendly rather than just being presented with the data. But again, even though there is a huge range of different topics that you can access, actual real-time data is still on the ground. This is kind of an example here of how how data is often visualized in the form of kind of interactive maps. And again, we kept asking ourselves, is there a better way that we can do this? Is there a way that maybe kind of headlines of the data is presented and then people can dig a bit deeper if they wished? Leicester here, they've got a site that shares data. The landing page, I would say, on this site feels kind of more public friendly and more public facing. It's asking the question there, what do you want to find? And then this site here, big Stockport picture, the aesthetic indicates, I would say, that there's kind of been more thought given to the consumer here. So it's quite simple to look at, and it's easy to find topics, and it feels much less just a site that presents data. But when you do dig a bit deeper, you can see that it kind of acts as an aggregator. So it takes you through to .gov sites, or it pulls in data visualizations that are not really unlike what we've seen on other sites. So I guess in summary from this piece of research, real-time data on travel and transport isn't really presented through these city sharing sites. Most of the data is, raw data sets, or there is some kind of visualization. And it's not always clear who the intended audience is for these sites. So given kind of what we found and the general focus on static data and not real-time data, we started to think, well, where can you get real-time travel and transport data from? And here, the DFT initiative provides the bus open data service, and people are using this data and they're doing stuff with it. This site here is it's called bustimes.org, and they pull data from the BODS site, but they also pull it from other sources as well. And you can see here all the little buses that are in Newcastle city centre, and they move around in real time. And then if you click on one, you can kind of even see whether there's kind of USB power, step-free access. So it can kind of give the user an indication as to the bus that they're getting on, where it's going, how busy it is. Another site we looked at was Northeast Traffic, and they use traffic cams to enable the users to kind of see an almost up-to-date visual of how busy the traffic is. And this is not unlike what we currently have on How Busy Is Toon with the street cams, which people have responded positively to. Here again, another example of real journey time where you can see kind of the buses that are live and active in your area. And again, this is using the data from the BOD site. And then we've got here the UTMC Open Data Service, and they provide traffic and travel related data sets through the provision of an open application or an API, and that's detailed on their site, so you can pull it in from there. So I'll pass back over to Jenny to talk about where this leaves us.
Yeah, so where does this leave us? So users do want real-time data about moving around in a convenient place, and that we've had a really positive response to the cameras on the current How Busy Is Toon site. So we do have cameras for travel. That is good to provide. We know that cities want to share real-time data to support innovation, economic benefits and sustainability. And as I said before, yes, it is about making it easy for app developers and Google and Citymapper, but it isn't just about leaving it to them to do that for us. There is a role for cities to play. We know that some real-time data is presented in existing consumer apps, but we're not focusing on route planning. So this was where we got to at the end of the first part of the research, which is, actually there's a lot of user need, but they are already in part being met by some of those consumer products. We're not going head to head with Citymapper. There's no value in doing that. But what we are doing is thinking about, well, how can we use other real-time data to help support people to make a decision? And I think that's something that if we think back to How Busy Is Toon, at no point were we saying to people, you should come into town at 11:33 a.m. It was about sharing real-time information to help people make a decision, help inform their decision making, not necessarily give them an exact time to come in, or in a way that perhaps would be similar to planning an exact route from getting from A to B. And the other, where real-time data is available, but isn't presented in consumer apps and is presented elsewhere, I think we can see that perhaps that hasn't been presented in a sort of user-centered way, perhaps about sharing data with policymakers. Some of the sites are maybe things that people have developed in their own time, which is great, but they haven't been given that real sort of accessible consumer user focus that perhaps we would like. And again, I think that's very similar to where we were with How Busy Is Toon, in that the data had been available through the observatory for years. And what How Busy Is Toon helped do was showcase that in a way that was more accessible for people as well. And obviously there is other real-time data that we'd like to have that isn't available yet. And again, we're constantly thinking about, well, how can we do something that helps encourage open data sharing, helps encourage other organizations to share data that they have to increase the level of data within the city, within any city, and ultimately then allow us to make other decisions on top of that. And again, we don't want to lose the idea of the sort of green thread running through some of this, and actually how can we continue to support active travel while also sharing data about other ways of moving around. I think we all know that, we know from previous research, car is still king in terms of people's transport choices, especially at the minute with some of the government messaging. So, we know that we have to accept that, but how can we still keep the green agenda supported through whatever we do? And I guess we've reached a point where we feel like there is something that we can do that's to step forward that builds on what we've done with How Busy Is Toon, that does take a step towards meeting some of the user needs, and actually, again, encourages more data to come out and can absolutely be white labeled and used by other cities, which again is part of what this is all about. It's not just about developing a Newcastle-centric product. So what we have, and you should excuse the fact that it was, it does look like it's been done on the back of a fag packet, is this idea of, well, how can we show what we currently have? So, for example, we know people like the images, we have the images. So can we pick and show, 4 of the key cameras, real-time data being shown around how busy the roads are? You'd then provide a link to that actual data, and the link to some of the Urban Observatory data that's there as well. So it's about, yes, a consumer interface, but also access to that real-time data as well. If where you can look at, well, where's my bus? So at the minute, there is that bus open data service. So people like Go North East, for example, they show their version of this within their app. Actually, if you're not necessarily a Go North East regular user, you wouldn't necessarily have their app. Actually, this would allow you to see various different operators and understand, different routes that you might be able to take. Other data that might be available and that you could plug in depending on what you have within your city would be things like real-time car parking data, information on EV charging points, metro, tram, light rail data, things like location of e-scooters, and really developing this as a bit of a one-stop shop for the real-time traffic and mobility information that we have that, as I say, serves a consumer purpose, brings together data that is already out there but just isn't presented in any sort of collaborative or cohesive way. And then, we can also build in, so I said about the sort of nudge messaging, that, the strap lines at the bottom around, the road's looking busy, bus running late, why not walk or cycle, plan your route here, linking people to the existing consumer apps that are already there to help people plan walking routes. But also, can we tie in other data like this is where you can park your bike? So this is our very sort of current, like 24, 36 hours ago thinking of what we're going to do. David, do you want to flick on? I guess where we're at now is we feel quite excited that is something that we can do. It could initially be sort of designed and wireframed in a way that doesn't look like I've just done it in PowerPoint in 10 minutes, which is what it currently looks like. And then obviously we can prototype that and test it back with users and say, well, is this what you'd be interested in? Would you be interested in this? What value would this bring? What would this help you to do? And then, at that point then look at, well, which are the real-time data sets that we integrate, and does it sit within the current How Busy Is Toon website? You know, does it replace the travel and transport page on there, or actually does it become its own spin-out product, and is it moving around toon.com and the, you know, a little sister product to How Busy Is Toon? But I think if that, building on what we know about How Busy Is Toon and doing something that we can, I mean, like I say, this was never about going head to head with Google Maps. We all know that there's no point doing that, and there's very little user value in that. But actually, this feels like a real step that we could take that would help the city, will help residents, and will also help people like Google Maps and Citymapper by providing access to the data, the real-time data in one place. So thank you for listening. Anybody got any points or questions for David and I? Doesn't seem like there is. Although, Adrian, are you trying to say something there?
I was just checking to see if my microphone was on or off. Could David, could you put that the last slide up?
Can do, yeah.
The really detailed one that, no, not that one. That one.
That one, yeah.
That fantastic bit of Jenny's hedgehog work. Because that's, I mean, that's all, I mean, that's it, isn't it? I mean, it's all there, Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we felt, that certainly there's one thing thinking about Newcastle, but actually other cities might have different things that they would pop in the boxes. But ultimately, how do you show this type of data to people in one place? And yeah, I'm sure it'll look significantly better, but we were keen that it brought that together. But we do really like the nudge bit as well. And like I say, we didn't just want to be seen to encouraging you know, perhaps vehicle travel, but you know, how do we integrate that as well? I'll be really interested in what the sort of user feedback is. It's because generally the consistent theme has been that people like this kind of thing, and almost they don't know they like it until they see it, if that makes sense. I think that's what some of the How Busy Is Toon stuff showed to me. And actually that bus open data, the bus times website, I find that absolutely fascinating, that you can just see hundreds of buses moving around the map. And I'm not a sort of bus nerd particularly, but it's just really interesting to see that data is there. And actually part of the programme as well was about helping people see that data exists within a city. Anybody else got any comments?
So Jenny, what are you? I'm a bit out of date then, so apologies for that. But is the proposal then that that you're showing us now is something that Hedgehog go and develop a bit further? Yes.
So the next stage would be working this design up into something that's something that you would want to share with people.
Yeah.
Get some more feedback about whether they think that if that's valuable to them. And I think that, you know, that consultation wouldn't just be end users. I think there's, you know, people like yourself, the business community, and you know, people in cities as well, to say, is this a good thing? Do people think it's valuable? On the hope that people say, yes, we think it's a good idea, then we'd look to actually take it to the next step. But yeah, the first step will be, let's make it look a bit nicer and see what people think of it.
Because I can see loads of utility for this, but that's also sort of down the line, and you know, you kind of, you know, with something like this, that, you know, it's easy to run away with yourself and sort of imagine lots of related, much better sort of functionality. So I don't know, you know, the e-scooters, you know, straight through to, you know, I can't remember, Neuron or something, isn't it? Who are the guy, you know, straight through to them. That is exactly it, and that is a conversation that I've had with Neuron, because at the minute you can only find out where the Neuron scooters are using their app. Yes. Whereas actually, you know, can you present it in through this? Because
if I've never been on a Neuron scooter, I'm not going to have the app. Whereas if I went on this to look at something else and I think, oh, there's a scooter,
Yeah.
you know, it then sort of nudges you towards that as well. So I think in that sense, it helps encourage other people to share data as well, because it's, you know, a free notice board or free advert for them to be able to push that data through.
Yeah. And I think things like, you know, the bit at the bottom, you know, where can you, you know, I like the idea of staying around after work for a drink and meet with friends. Where do you park your bike? You know, I think that's exactly the sort of functionality that people would come to find useful. But you know, I also think that takes us to areas that are, to be honest, outside its remit, and definitely outside Hedgehog's remit. But you know, you kind of think of, you know, you think of trying to increase bicycle use, and actually, you know, if I looked at that for what I would find relevant, you know, sort of living north, you know, out beyond the airport, you know, I do use my bike, but occasionally, but I park it on a street outside the parking meter zone, because, you know, the advantage is not having to pay for parking if you're then going to sort of cycle. And when I've got my bike in, you know, and it's a bit, to be honest, it's a bit hit or miss what route I take it. The cycle lanes are a bit stop and start. So in the fullness of time, all that needs to get better. And then I carry it up some stairs and I put it in the office because it was, you know, relatively expensive. And I certainly would never dream of leaving it on a kind of city hoop, because I would come back and find bits missing from it, or someone had trashed it, or at least that would be my fear. So therefore, you know, I would, you know, where, you know, the thing of where can you park your bike is, you know, well, you know, the answer is you can park your bike anywhere because there's hoops all over the place. But what would be more interesting would be where can you park your bike securely?
Yeah.
And where's the, you know, and where's the space for that, rather than just chaining it to a lamppost, which, you know I can do anywhere. So, you know, it's that sort of, you know, it's kind of getting something up and running, and then which is exactly where you are now with this, and then being able to sort of, you know, build the utility as better things come along in the city over time. So I think it's a fantastic sort of next step, Jenny.
Great, thanks for that, Adrian, and couldn't agree more on the other. I think it helps make the case for those kind of things. You know, actually, you know, if we've got somewhere that we signpost to it, then actually, why wouldn't we want to have a designated safe cycle zone or something that, you know, they provide a bit of a, like I say, a shop window for. Fantastic. So unless anybody has any final questions, we'll leave it there. We will have another one in a few weeks' time to update on where we get to next. We're certainly really excited, but if anybody has any comments or anything like that, then just drop me a line. You can also stay up to date with the project on our local gov project site, and also on Twitter as well. We also share a lot of information on Twitter. So let me know what you think, and we'll catch you soon.
And also, Jenny, can I just say it's fantastic. We're so pleased that Hedgehog are involved with this. It's really good to have a Newcastle-based company working on this. So brilliant.
We love working on this, I should say. It's one of my personal favourite projects, as I'm sure Jenny knows.
Yeah, I know. I bet you. Yeah, no, it's great. Really good.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jenny.
Bye.